Hello, everyone. Sarah Altair with Actation Now, and this is the Midweek Zap. And today I am so excited. We have Peter Hatherley, and he is going to be telling us more about CISE, conceptual, intellectual, semantics. I can't talk. Conceptual, intellectual, search engine. There we go. And more importantly, he's going to be talking about semantic fame generation. So I just stay tuned. So Peter, please introduce yourself and tell all the folks who don't know who you are.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Really nice to be here again, and really looking forward to it today. Yes, I run a company in New Zealand called Intimate, and I've developed this product called CISE, which is a semantic theme generator. And really, it's a contextual engine which you can use for semantic keywords. I don't want to go into too much depth on that side of it. I could go on for a long time, but basically, that's the general description of what it does. It produces sets that can be used for semantic optimization.
I know, Peter, when we first started talking about it, I was just so amazed because I'm a writer, and all my life I've been looking for le mot juste, and it's hard. And oftentimes, just with a simple old-fashioned way of looking for the right word, a synonym isn't it. So I think one of the things that excites me about CISE is the way it metaphorically connects concepts, the concepts of the words, not just the synonymity of the words. And everyone today who's watching is going to be really astounded at what those connections are, and more importantly, how search engine sees those words. So I thought maybe you could share a little bit about how where those words come from. When you do a search and the words pop up and you're like, what? Kerfuffle? What's that got to do with help? How did it get in that word set?
Yeah, well, it really shows up in the hummingbird patent, and I did an in-depth analysis of it last week and found some areas which really actually surprised me. It's amazing, they're hidden in plain sight sometimes, and you're looking at these things and you can't see the wood for the trees. But in this particular case, I saw the connection between the contextual parts of the synonym engine, and there's a post that that's connected, and I think others that are watching will probably have read that post. But it's to do with adjacent context, which we all understand. So adjacent context is that deeper rabbit hole than a synonym. Synonyms just take us down a very narrow path, and it's like a straitjacket in a way. In saying that, if you use a lot of them, you can be quite creative. And the other one that really surprised me was the floating context. Now, floating context, to give you an idea, is a good example is a post I did recently on semantic optimization, which I used the terminology body language. Now, CISE pulled that up when I did a search for web design, and I thought, well, that's a good way to describe it. And so I was able to use that metaphor, and that's the sort of thing that you get out of it. It's their ideas, lateral ideas. I've been into lateral thinking since I was a teenager, basically, when it first came out, and brainstorming, all of these things. We're all very used to them, but CISE sort of does it for you. And so because language is intertwined, it throws out ideas that you just wouldn't have thought of otherwise. And it surprises me. I mean, I invented it in that sense, but every time I do a search, I find out something new. And in a way, you know, I've only searched maybe even only 10% of it overall. So it's really interesting from that creative point of view, more so than anything else. And that's why I set it up in the first place, was to be more creative. And then Hummingbird came along and I realized, SEO is sort of connected to this. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And, you know, considering I was in the business.
Discovery that, and you know, you did so much work going through all those 40 plus algorithms to make it work. I think today you have a presentation for everyone.
Yes. Yeah. So we better get into that. So I'll just get into the screen share. Okay. I think I've got it going here. Okay. Screen share. And we'll go to the search engine here. Now, so CISE is basically, it's just a search box. You can go in there, and the query is quite important. So in this particular case, I've got semantic optimization here, and then you can just search on semantic optimization, and we get this the set that comes up. Now, I've discussed this previously a little with the positives and the negatives. You can see the legend at the bottom there. It covers the differences in these groups. Now, in saying that, it's only a guideline. And so the guideline is that it's likely to be in that group. Because it's contextual, it could swap at various times and be useful in different ways. So it's not a hard and fast rule, but it gives a good guideline. And the context comes from the actual query itself, which is semantic optimization. So a good example of this is, say, first past the post. Now, in general terms, most people would think that's to do with maybe horse racing, but it's just a saying, an idiom that we're used to, right? So that can become a, you know, in terms of semantic optimization, that's what you're looking for. You want to be first past the post. And so it gives a nice sort of metaphor to be able to build on, which you wouldn't have got through any drill down. It's just not going to come up if you drill down on big data. Those sort of things just don't appear. All you get is generally what other people are using. And it's appropriately called copy. But in this case, you're getting something that's generally new. I mean, cotton on's another one there, which is an interesting one. Contagious optimism, that's you know, an interesting one. And I quite like the compos mentis one, which is this one here. Oh, that one there, sorry. Compos mentis, which is non-compos mentis, which is don't understand. Compos mentis is do understand, so that's a nice one. But, you know, I find the objections really interesting too. You've got doesn't matter to me. A lot of people think, oh, I'm not interested in semantic optimization. We've been using keyword optimization for years. It's not important. And so that it's interesting that it shows the negative aspects of something as well as the positive aspects of it. And you know, there's certain idioms there that you can pull in that you can use in different places. People think it may be a little presumptuous about semantic optimization. The point is that it definitely does work, and some of the stats that I showed in the lead up to this event cover that. You know, the advantages of doing it, and then the straitjacket's off. We don't have to just place keywords here, there, everywhere, and just think keywords. Now we can think, let's be creative. Let's do something a bit different. So that's an example of how it works.
I think also for thinking about it from a writer's point of view is that one of the things that CISE brings up is idiomatic expressions rather than, you know, so there's much more context. And I think that's why when I first saw it that I was so surprised with these you know, everyday expressions, some of them even older expressions. I haven't heard anyone use button on in quite a while, but,
Yeah.
you know, the idiomatic expressions come up that come from everyday speech. This is not a big think hard head thing. I think that's what's so amazing about it, is that because search already recognizes that these words cluster together and are contextually related, there they are. You know,
That's right.
help yourself.
Yeah.
It's kind of
And
a help yourself thing with CISE, is like, whoa, this is a way to spark your writing with, you know, ideas that you wouldn't have thought of, particularly yourself. And then I wanted to bring up, Peter, we have a question from Wiwek in England, and the Wiwek says, is CISE only for English, or are other languages supported?
great question. We've done it for English. We've done preliminary studies with Spanish, and it definitely works for Spanish. My testing has shown that it will work with multiple languages. Any language that can be transliterated, and that means it can be converted into, you know, the letters that we use. I'm working with someone on Russian as well, which is interesting because it's one of the last ones that I'd had on the list, but I'm just intrigued to see how that transliterates as far as that's concerned. So yeah, it's a very much a future thing though at this point. It's English at the moment.
All right, that's good. But just for the future, so say with Russian, we have a completely different alphabet. It is still able to go find in that language with that different alphabet.
Yeah, the one that I'm sort of slightly not sure on is Asian languages.
Okay.
I haven't really looked at that in great depth, but as long as it can be transliterated, which I believe it can be, and I haven't, as I say, it's not my area of expertise on that side, but I know that all European languages seem to work. And I've done, as I say, Spanish definitely works, and I've fortunately had a person who is a very close friend who now speaks Spanish as a second language, and he's been very useful in giving me some feedback on that as well. And we've created a Spanish database, so we've got that far with it. So,
oh, that's really very exciting. While we're here on this page, I thought you could go up to the top there and show us what the star mean and the little file box.
The star is actually, in this particular case, it's been saved to the favorites, but you can click on that and it saves to the favorites. The one beside it is the this one here is where you can go back to your favorites. This here is to do with collecting words. So if you collect, say, semantics or semantic profile, for instance, and then you can go and that will copy to the clipboard there. And then you can just cut and paste that into those particular words, into whatever app you might be using for writing. So it's quite useful for that. So they're fairly simple and fairly generic. So I've tried to keep them generic. So this one just clears off the ones that you've selected. So if you're wanting to do any extra ones and look at things, because what happens is when you tap them, of course, they reverse out. So you don't want too much because it gets too cluttered. And that's one of the reasons I made that that way, is that you can then just concentrate on a couple of words that you're looking at, or trying to put a few words together that you quite like. Another thing that's really interesting, which is that with a long press, it's like a semantic explorer. With a long press, it will take you into Google, and you can drill down and do Google. So, you know, this will give you all the details about semantics, and Google's answer boxes now are just tremendous like this. You can get some really interesting information on it, and it gives you the full information on that. So it's really handy to just do some extra. Say if you see something there and you think, oh, I don't know what that means. It'd be interesting to see what they say about first past the post. you know, it's first past the post, and the most likely one comes up, which is the one that we've used to have here in New Zealand, which was first past the post up until a few years ago. And so it gives you that history and historical background. So it's a bit of an explorer at the same time. I sort of set it up for myself. It was a way of quickly finding out what was the connections and all these sort of things. So, and again, that's part of the package. So that's quite useful.
And just to go on a little further with the demonstration, if
perhaps look, do you want to look at another one of the? I mean, these are ones that are in the favorites. Now you just click that to go back to search, or you can go to favorites wherever you are. For instance, say if we go, what's a good example? Yeah, the web design one's probably a good example. Which, you know, is a keyword related one. Now, if you've searched on this, it's a paid search, but if you favorited it, you can go back and you've got access to that ad infinitum. So it just sits there and you can use it again at any point in the future. So, and we see in here body language, which is where I got that idea from. So that's the type of thing that it's done for me. I mean, it just gave me a vehicle there to be able to talk about that. And, you know, if you go into the negatives, it's a great description of what it's like running a web design company. And seeing sites that have been abandoned, they're not engaging. We all hear about engagement. We all hear about these certain things. And, you know, even this one I found really interesting, law abiding. You think, well, what's law abiding got to do with web design? But it's about keeping to standards. A good website adheres to, you know, the W3C standards. It adheres to all of these standards. They're going to load faster. Google's going to rate you better. It's a major part of web design. So those are the sort of unusual things that you actually see in these things. And you've got to, I think you've got to have a sort of an unbias of sorts to see how does this connect, rather than being a knee-jerk reaction. If you look for ways and seeing how they connect, you find new opportunities and new avenues to explore and go down. You know, it's Smart Design is one that I've actually used for Intimate, and it's got a nice little connection with Intimate as a, you know, has a sort of connection that's quite direct there. So it just shows you what, and wowed is a good example. And, you know, people want to be wowed with web design, and yet it's only a part of it, isn't it?
Yes.
So that, and diagnosis is huge. Redesign is huge. Bandwagon, there's a bandwagon that usually is, you know, you have it on a yearly basis. There's a sort of style that people tend to go for, and then that goes off, and then people go onto another bandwagon with it. So, you know, it's a really, some of them might appear obscure, but they're useful. Like, you improve a website by degrees, just bit by bit. The top ones obviously being far more positive, and the middle ones being what are called natural context. So even, I mean, you've got the obscure ones like wedding in there, but wedding sites are huge on the web. So even though it doesn't appear incredibly connected, it is actually connected. So, and that's what's called floating context. And Google's have it's in the Hummingbird and in the post that I've done on it, it brings up the fact that Google is actually rating floating context. Just like a comedian comes up with a joke, he uses context to change the meaning of the actual of the thing. And so, but he does it in context that is related to it. And so Google's actually probably getting to the point where they could possibly understand jokes, which is really interesting.
Well, no, we were talking about that last night, and I think what you were just talking about has a lot to do to answer Shell O'Connell's question. She said, Wake mentioned other languages. What about dialects? For example, caught in England means one thing, and caught means something else in America. And I think
it's a good question. And I found that really interesting because it seems to relate to the actual query. As soon as you realize that the top query is the major factor, and that's why I made it so large actually, so it was obvious to people that this is all about web design. This is not, these words might, if you take away the context of web design, you won't understand what the set's about. And so I mean, I could potentially do the word court just as an example, just to see what comes up.
No, she's using COT, cot.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I mean, but you can see this brings up a whole lot of stuff. So how is it spelled? I didn't actually see it because I'm still in the screen shares. So.
C-O-T.
C.
Yes, like an
cot.
Like
C-O-T.
an art cot. Right.
Oh, yeah. But anyway, this is actually probably a good example. Just as an example, it just shows you how. I mean, court. I mean, you've got cage fight. You're caught. That just shows you the type of context that you can pull out of this thing. This gives you. You've got to realise that the subject is court. In this particular case, obviously, sort of slightly lateral on the query of the question, but. You can see that it shows up some really interesting things, and I've never done that search before, so it's just a new search for me. All of these words stand, as it were, naked before the algorithms. They're not linked by any other means. They're not linked as like in a database as such. They're just chosen whether they've got the patterns or not connected to that word, and so you can see there's some really interesting stuff that connects them to that. So anyway. So
can we do Shell's word just
how's it spelled again?
C-O-T.
Just C-O-T, cot.
Right.
It's quite a small word.
Yep.
Yeah.
Small word.
So it'll create a slightly different set. Now this is the interesting thing.
Cotton on is there again.
Yeah. Of course, you can see after a while you start to see these patterns. You start to see, oh yeah, cotton on wool, and cotton and cot is a huge connection, of course. The city, cotton city, and of course you go back to site and city and all these things to do with cities. Cots and cities seem there's a connection there. Even CCTV's there. So in other words, you can have a camera looking after a cot and just making sure that someone's all right in the hospital or whatever. So you can see there's some interesting connections there. And obviously cute's a good one for anyone who's got grandchildren or their own children, and cute in the cot, it sort of works. I can just look at them, and interestingly enough, I see them straight away because I'm just used to seeing stuff like this. There's some pretty extreme ones there as well. So you can see panic attack. I mean, panic attack was one of the great searches that I did. I remember there was someone that we knew that was having problems with panic attacks, and I put it in, and it just showed me the way to deal with that person. It gave me a lot more empathy towards what that person was struggling with, actually. And it's probably worth actually looking at, because people do struggle with these things.
They do. I want to bring up a statement from Heart GA. Hi, Heart. I like the fact that CISE is, excuse me, is precisely concise.
Yeah.
I found it very useful, especially for copy and keyword targeting for AdWords.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that comment. And it's great. You're getting the value out of it and finding it useful. And it really is. I mean, I find it just makes my job for writing copy, and it actually solved trying to get copy of clients, because I was never short of being able to write a bit of copy after getting these these theme sets out. And you just don't get writer's block. It just doesn't happen. But the one with panic attack is really interesting. Incapacitated was the word that I got. People are incapacitated in a panic attack, and when you realize they're incapacitated, they just, and panic button obviously works there. And you know, it's one of those things that really shows up as a strong element. And just that one word made me feel completely differently about this person, that I realized they couldn't do anything. They were just you know, stuck there, like they had concrete feet. So it really was a particularly strong indication for me to solve a particular problem. And so it alone, apart from its creative side, it's got things where you can just type in problems and have a look at the various aspects of them. And you know, for that particular person, I've always kept an eye on them since, and you know, and it's just keeping an eye on those things. And it's funny, setting concrete's up there. Talk about concrete, didn't see that there. So and don't panic.
I remember a conversation we had a while back about using CISE in just this manner to develop empathy. That when a situation like that comes up and you look in CISE and you look at the words that are contextually related, it does help to understand from a human perspective what something like that can be.
We're working towards making a set that's going to be available for people, that's going to be complementary, and it's going to be based on the human condition, because we feel that, and this is part of our whole philosophy here, is to, you know, to be of use to people and to help them in needs that they've got, and just standard human needs. And so there is that side to it that is more angled towards that, and there's the SEO side, which is you know, obviously more of a commercial thing. So we are working on creating ones that will be available for people to search just directly for this purpose, without cost. So that's something that will be happening in the future. They'll probably be slightly smaller sets. And in saying this, I mean, these sets are working out now about this one is 55, the top 55. And I mean, it produces sets of 200. I use very large sets, but most people struggle with large sets. So this is why I've kept it at this size, which seems to be, you know, seems to be quite popular about this size. But the commercial sets, we can create sets on demand for people, larger sets if they need them. So that's another aspect of it. And the thing I mentioned that reminds me that today, for people who are watching the event and all the Zapsers out there, and anyone who watches the replay as well, there are 5 complementary searches. If you go to CISE.info/search, I'll put the URL in the thread, and basically just do your registration, and you'll have 5 complementary searches which you can use for any purpose you like.
Well, thank you so much, Peter. That's quite generous.
Yeah, it's only for 24 hours, and then it will just go back to you know, the paid version of it. But you know, it's an opportunity for people to have a look and just try it out themselves, and just see if it's of any value for you.
Okay, so it's set up for 24 hours.
Yeah, it's set up there now, and so if anybody goes to that address, they'll automatically get those. But with 24 hours, I thought we've got to look at the timeline. When I say 24 hours, it's probably as long as, you know, the timeline goes. We're the first in the world that, you know, we obviously get some earlier than everybody else. So it's Thursday here, you see, and whereas it's Wednesday. Wednesday where you are.
Okay.
Yeah. So in saying the help file was there as well, and you know, I've gone through the search area. So basically, I suppose I can get back to the screen and see everybody again. Yeah, well, I'm pleased that we did have a good chance to have a look at the screen and show people, because when we first talked, it was all excitement and we're getting to the point of releasing it and things, and and people didn't get a good chance to see how it works. But I'm working on creating some good video files that people can use to get a far better idea of how it can be used.
That's really great, Peter.
Mm.
And I think I'd like to spend the last few minutes today talking about, if you could talk some more about semantic fame generation, and also the study that you posted, was that a week ago? I've lost track of time, about what happened and how it can help people with their fame generation.
Yeah. I mean, there's several posts I've been doing, and the morphological one is only for geeks. I mean, it's morphological creativity, which in a way, just think of it as lateral thinking or brainstorming. And obviously we've seen that in various terms that we've looked at today. But yeah, the adjacent context and the floating context, which was in the hummingbird patent, are very, very critical in this area, because it just opens the door. We've ended up, we had a straitjacket on an SEO where we had to just put keywords here, and if we put them too close together, and we have to put it back over here, and it was just sort of like, it took away the enjoyment of writing, in my view. I like creating.
It was also counterintuitive to me. My first struggle with keywords was like, I just don't think like this. And so I think that part of the ability, I like your body language, that for those of you who see the body, the text is the body, and on the page, that the language inside of that is what the search engine closely examines, and especially, as Peter mentioned, for adjacent words. How are they all together in the text? All of these things, but what CISE illustrates is that, I mean, those words don't just, float out of the heavens. There's a search engine behind it that says, when Google goes out and searches and finds this word, these are the other words that are often frequently clustered around this main word that you're looking for. And that's, in simple language, how you get from putting in a word or two words into CISE and then coming up with this amazing array of words to think about. And I notice in writing that I also like the negative words, because when you're illustrating a point, the negative words are like, this is where you don't want to be, whatever it is you're talking about. You could end up in, the giant kerfuffle. It's just, I think it's mind expanding when you're writing and you're coming up with an idea and how you're going to formulate your article or your post, and that it just sparks new ideas, because if each of us have, some kind of cognitive resonance with the particular words, and just as Peter mentioned earlier, here's this set of positive and related and negative words, and it's what resonates with you today. What's your mind sparking off on a new idea that can actually enliven your writing?
Well, with the negatives, it's really interesting, because you can write to objections, and because people have had trouble, like the web design ones. These are common problems that happen in web design. I can assure you, it's a very, they really hit the mark. And normally you don't think of writing like that way, but a sensible person writes to objections because they know that these things are in the mimetic behaviour of the people. And so you know that you're writing to genuine concerns, and I think that that really does help. The big difference with big data, and this is the problem that I found, we tried big data and went down the big data track, and unfortunately smart data is so much better, because with big data you're getting detail and sort of things that you need to filter out, and the filters are just incredible, because you might just, as we're talking about in the green room, you know, get words that are more sort of related to countries or things like that, which are less relevant than what we'd see in CISE. But it's because those things don't appear there. But we could connect countries into it, and countries could come into it. But at the same time, it would be more obscure, far more obscure. And I think localization is something that you don't really have to get too lateral about. It's you know, you either live in a place or you don't, and you can't really sort of go much further. It's a very fixed factor, and you know, just in the keyword level, I think. Yeah.
That's Peter, I want to thank you so much for being here today and for going deeper into the power of CISE and the words that we have. And I love your phrase, semantic fame generation. That's just terrific. And thank you so much for your generous offer. So everyone, all you Zapsters, you have 5 searches in the next 24 hours so you can play with CISE. So Peter, I want to thank you very much. Next week we have Mark Traphagen with no snow. So he will actually be here. So anyway, Zapsters, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for your questions and comments, and we'll see you next week. Thanks again, Peter. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sarah.